Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live's Leaf Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is also available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me as usual is my cohort in Leaf Talk, and his name is Aaron William Freeland. Hey, Aaron, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Frank. How are you?
I'm okay. The weather, the snow here is getting to me. That's one thing about living out here. The traffic's awesome, but the snow is a drag.
I can
It's a real
absolutely imagine. We get a
drag.
lot of lake effect where we are because we're just north of the Petrocan plant, but
Mm-hmm.
right down by the lake. But it's not too
I
bad.
We get a foot yesterday, 2 feet the day before that, 2 feet the week before that. So I got. We tried pulling in the driveway, and it wasn't my turn to drive, so somebody had a hard time pulling into the driveway. Not naming
Oof.
names. Could not pull in the driveway at all. It was totally horrendous, let me tell you. But you know what? We got in, and there's a reason why we call this Leaf Talk. I just want to make sure that people understand why it's called Leaf Talk. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make it so I understand why it's called Leaf Talk, which means pull up the email that Aaron sends me and says, Frank, this is what I'd like to talk about. So, out of respect for what Aaron wants to talk about, I'm going to look at it right now and bring up the things that he wants to talk about. In the first period, he wants to talk about Jordan Stahl and how they beat the Leafs after the Leafs had a 2-0 lead, tied it, I guess what, once or twice, and then no, once, tied it once, and then fell behind and lost 6-3. Aaron, what happened in this game?
Well, there was a lot that went on. Toronto came out of the gate hot. They were up 2-0, but then the Hurricanes tied it 2-2 with Stahl's first goal with 5:45 left in the first period, and then Jordan Stahl scored again 35 seconds into the second period for a 3-2 lead, and 20 seconds into the third period to extend Carolina's lead to 5-3. The Leafs had been running a little bit hot lately. They were on a 5-game winning streak, which unfortunately streaks have a bad habit of ending, and the Maple Leafs one did in rather spectacular fashion. The first half of the game they looked absolutely fantastic. They looked absolutely dominant. It was the second and third periods where they appeared to run out of gas. Nylander had 2 breakaway chances in the first and scored on one of them. That was his first goal since December 21st, which is a span of about 8 games. That, in and of itself, was a little bit concerning because he's always been the hot hand for the Maple Leafs, and to have him go dry at a rather inopportune time was not something you ever wanted to see. Um, Nicky Bobby and Austin Matthews also scored. Joseph Wall made 28 saves. On top of Jordan Stahl's hat trick, Eric Robinson, Jackson Blake, and Seth Jarvis also scored for the Hurricanes, while Pyotr Kochetkov stopped 30 shots for his first home win since December 17th. So, some players getting hot, some players unfortunately staying cold. And at the end of the day, a loss every 6 games isn't the end of the world like some folks would have you believe. But it is
Each
concerning.
each loss is a trauma.
Of course, it is. It's a disaster.
Each loss is a trauma. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at people's pain, but it is funny. Okay, let's stay with hockey, Aaron, if you don't mind, and let's talk about Tavares and how he's exceeded expectations and added a milestone to his achievements.
Yeah, this is one of those things where John has been understatedly good, and people tend to miss that. Um, Tavares actually had his 15th career 20-goal season. Um, that's tied Alex Ovechkin for the most 20-goal campaigns since the 2009-2010 season with 15. The only season in which I think so far he hasn't scored 20 goals was the pandemic shortened season in 2020. He had 19 goals in 56 games. So that is understatedly something that he's been doing very, very well and very, very low key. The interesting thing is the other player that's actually up there along with Alex Ovechkin and John Tavares is Patrick Kane, who has 14 20-goal seasons. So, you know, understatedly, he's slowly been amassing points. Since Tavares has entered the league since 2009, 2010, only Ovechkin and Steve Stamkos have scored more goals than John Tavares. So we're looking at Ovechkin with 653, chasing Gretzky's record, and Steven Stamkos, currently of the Nashville Predators, with 544.
Yeah, so he's been a pretty good scorer over his career. Um, he's been consistent too. You know, there the irony here is, and people have already mentioned it, so I won't take credit for it, but I've heard it and I can't agree more. This was a contract that the last year or two, a lot of people projected, well, these would be the tough years for the Leafs to swallow, right? Mostly because Tavares was never known as a speed merchant, and because he's maintained the minimal speed that he has, it hasn't dropped drastically. His previous speed hasn't changed that much. You know, it hasn't decelerated to the point where it's extremely obvious, because the way he plays um, doesn't always rely on speed. Let's face it, his best work is along the boards, behind the net. You know, handling the puck in a closet. That's what he does best, and he's able to maintain possession of the puck with one, sometimes two guys trying to get it from him, and that's his biggest strength. And as long as the Leafs have guys on the line with him that can make up for his lack of speed, Aaron, he's not a problem, in my opinion.
No. And you know what? Of his 476 career goals so far, 204 have come while he's been with the Maple Leafs. Now, he joined the Leafs in 2018, and everybody was really not happy with the 7-year, $11 million contract that came with it. But on top of scoring a career high 47 goals in his first season with the Maple Leafs, he's averaging 0.42 goals a game and 0.96 points per game on average over his 482, almost 500 regular season games with the Leafs. And he's currently actually in the middle of one of his best seasons ever. So understatedly, like, this guy has been worth every single dollar that the Leafs have decided to pay him.
I wouldn't go that far, but okay. I'm going to say that it wasn't as bad a deal as people thought to begin with. I'll go that far. I'll also say that what he's done, right, scoring wise, he's been very consistent, and he's been a really good soldier. And I think he's one of the main reasons why this team is consistently in the top, you know, 5 to 10 teams in the league every year. Let's keep that in mind. This is a team that has finished high in the standings year after year after year, and you don't do that without a guy like him in the lineup. I think he's basically the rudder of this team. Like, you know, you have guys like Matthews, you know, they score a lot of goals and stuff like that, but his inconsistent play, along with some other players' inconsistent play, requires a kind of what we've seen this year, where the players behind the big four, they make a contribution, what seems like timely, but the most important thing is this team is learning how to play hockey as a team, and I believe that Tavares deserves a lot of credit for that. I think he's, you know, his diligence, his hard work, is something that other players and coaches can point to.
Oh, most definitely. And as you've mentioned, he has adapted his gameplay as he's aged to suit what this team needs, and it's been great to see him adapt. Yeah, he was a captain for 5 years, but I'm glad that he's passed that on to Matthews, because it allows him to focus more on his game as opposed to leading the team as well as his game. So,
All right, next, how close are McCabe and Stolars to returning to the lineup?
well, that's always the big question, right? You know, uh, Now, this morning's skate ahead of the game against the Canucks tonight, neither McCabe nor Stolars were on the ice, but Craig Berube did provide an update on them. McCabe missed the last two games after going down following a fight with Garnet Hathaway. He left on his own power but didn't return. Apparently, according to Berube, he's doing well. He skated this morning, but we don't really have a timeline on his return. Hopefully, it's not too long. He missed 5 games back in December after taking a puck to the head on November 30th in a game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he returned to the lineup against the Ducks on December 12th. Stolarz hasn't played since September 12th against the Ducks, where he sustained a knee injury. He played the first 20 minutes, as you remember, and didn't come back. Treliving said on December 17th that the 30-year-old had a procedure a few days later to remove a loose body the size of a pebble. Stolarz's timeline for a return was 4 to 6 weeks. Now,
Has that
it's
changed?
not uncommon for players to have these sort of little floating bodies. There's a lot of impact on a goalie's knees in particular. Stolarz was seen for the first time since his injury on the team's mentors trip this past week. On Tuesday, during their first stop in Philadelphia, he popped out for a group photo with the mentors and his teammates. Stolarz was also seen working out off ice with team staff. We're nearing the 4-week window now since his procedure, but I don't expect him back for at least another 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Ryan Reaves. What's up with him?
Well, this is an interesting question, and somebody posed this, and I thought it was something worth talking about. The Leafs so far this season have had 7 fights. Of those 7 fights, unfortunately, Ryan Reaves has been involved in exactly 0 of them. What people are positing now is, hey, look, he's played 27 games this season. He's thrown 86 hits, but he hasn't had a single fight. We know that we bring him in to be a big, whether that's big hitter, big plays,
An impact
a big
player,
body.
for sure.
Exactly. But the fact that he hasn't had a fight makes people wonder if he should actually still be in the lineup, seeing as that's quote unquote his job. But I want to draw parallels here. It seems like a lot of teams are choosing to fight when Reaves is not on the ice and can't get on the ice. Like, it's not like he's on the ice and a player starts a fight and nothing happens. It's that they're deliberately choosing to start fights when he's not on the ice, which, I mean, to a certain extent proves his effectiveness because nobody wants to fight him, but at the same time runs counter to the role that he has with the team, which is to support them and fight for them.
So I'm just wondering. I guess his game is about fighting by your definition.
Well, not by
Let's
my
say-
definition, by the teams.
Okay, but I'm sorry. What I mean, the point I want to make is that it's somebody's definition that he should be fighting. If he's decided that he's going to fight under certain terms, not any term, then the question is he fulfilling the expectations of the team? I think it doesn't. It wasn't possible anyway. We saw Dewar get into a fight, but Reaves wasn't in the lineup. Right?
Yeah.
That was the game he wasn't in the lineup. Or was he in the lineup that game?
I don't think he was at that particular point. So
okay. And so my point is he can't get involved in a fight that he's not invited to, because if he wants to be a hockey player and he doesn't want to be a detriment to the team, he shouldn't be going to look for fights, because he could get an instigator penalty or he gets a penalty for starting a fight. And the last thing a team needs is power plays against them. The Leafs, like any other team, right? Yeah. So maybe there's some truth to what you're saying in regards to the other team does not want to get into a scuffle with him and put him in a position where, if they're on the road, change the pattern of the game, if you will, give the team a lift and quiet the crowd down, all that stuff. Until I see something happen that I'm not at the point where I don't think he's fighting because he doesn't want to. I think he's being smart enough to only get into a fight when it's determined that he should be doing that, when his job of protecting smaller and better players comes into play, right? So I haven't seen that opportunity yet, but then again, there's some truth to the fact that you don't poke the bear. So if the bear's on the ice and you do something, you're poking the bear. You don't want to do that.
Well, and you know what? Honestly, in the 27 games that he's played so far this season, he's averaging about 8 minutes and 40 seconds a game. He has 2 assists, which is not really going to get anybody into the lineup, but he hasn't really been a defensive liability either.
Not like he was last year.
No, exactly.
Last year he was, remember?
Yeah, but he's only a -1 so far this season, and looking at this current season here, he's only got 23 penalty minutes, which is way down for him. You know, so eh,
Is he going for the Lady Bing?
I honestly don't think so, and I certainly hope not. But like you got to look at what he's doing here, and how other teams are essentially playing around him.
Well,
Now,
they're going to do that, aren't they?
oh,
Isn't
100%.
that their job to do it?
And it looks like he's actually going to be a scratch again today. Uh, Robertson is drawing in on the third line. Uh, Lorentz and Dewar are drawing in on the fourth, so it doesn't look like he's there. Now, this is the Leafs lineups as dated at 10:45 Eastern time that I'm looking at here. We've got Nyes, Matthews, and Marner on the first line, Pacioretty, Tavares, and Nylander on the second, McMahon, Domi, and Robertson on the third line, and Lawrence, Kampf, and Dewar on the fourth. You've got Riley and Tanev, OEL and Philippe Myers, and Simone Benoit and Connor Timmins on defense. It looks like, according to reports, that Hildeby is going to be starting over Wall. It looks like they're trying to shelter him a little bit by giving him the Vancouver Canucks on the second half of the back-to-back after travel. So that makes a limited amount of sense to me. It seems like the smart move in this particular case to get the kid some more reps, especially after the Vancouver game last night, where apparently they just got bullied by the Hurricanes. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. So we know what the lineups are, Aaron. Let's go to the Canadian Football League, and the Argos lose another big player in their lineup, Ormilade.
Well, you can look at it as them losing a player, but you can also look at them as getting national linebacker Cameron Judge. So there's a bit of a trade off here. You're trading a defensive lineman for
American.
one lineman for a lineman, an American for a Canadian in this particular case here. It's a return to Calgary for Malade, who played 31 games over 3 seasons with the Stamps in 18 and 21 and 22 before signing with Toronto as a free agent. Um, he's just recently added a second Grey Cup ring in 2024. Judge returns to Toronto after playing for the Argonauts during the 2021 season. So this is not an unknown quantity that's
No.
coming back here, which is good. He spent the last 3 seasons in Calgary, where he was the Stamps nominee for Most Outstanding Defensive Player in 24 and Most Outstanding Canadian in 22, 23, and 24, as well as the League and West Division All CFL team member in 2022. So, you know, he's a we're trading basically known quantities back and forth here. It's not like we're looking for a fresh start or anything. It might be something to spark everything, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a wash.
Yeah, except that the only thing that this almost sounds like, looks like, that they might be having trouble signing McManus. Judge is a
That
middle linebacker, so they've
mhm.
added to the middle linebacker core. I hope that isn't the case because McManus is a great team leader on defense. But we're going to find out if that's the case. If he lasts to free agency, I don't know that he'll be with the Argos because a lot of teams will offer him a lot of money, and I don't see why they wouldn't. I can't see anything that says no, not to that. All right, the Stamps extended Beggleton, great receiver.
Yeah, they looks like they're trying to make some solidifying moves, at least for the foreseeable future. They've got him signed. Now, Beggleton was already under contract for the 2025 season, but he's also now signed a 1-year extension that's going to keep him with the Stamps through the 2026 campaign. Um, he's of the opinion that the Stamps can go all the way. So, as expected, when you're signing a new deal, he's rah-rah, which is very neat. He was named all CFL for the third time in his career in 2024 as he started all 18 games slot back and finished tied for second in the league with 92 receptions and fifth in receiving yards with 1,150. So that is awesome. He also passed a couple of career milestones last year. He's got 5,000 receiving yards and 400 catches during the 2024 campaign, and was voted by teammates as the winner of the President's Ring Award for demonstrating excellence on and off the field. So good on Calgary for bringing him back.
How about Ottawa bringing Malden for the fourth back?
Yeah, 1 year contract extension. He was slated to become a free agent February 11th. That's probably the same day that we'll find out what's happening with McManus. But he's actually solidified himself as one of the CFL's most disruptive pass rushers since 2022, at least according to Red Blacks head coach Bob Dice. He says he's a dominant presence on our defensive line, and we couldn't be more excited to welcome him back for the 2025 season. So, you know, 2024 was Malden's third season in the nation's capital after spending 3 years with the Ticats. He finished tied with teammate Michael Wakefield with 8 sacks and recorded a career high 52 tackles. So good on them.
Former Alouette and now former BC Lion, William Stanback finds himself moving east again, not all the way to Montreal, but on the way to Montreal, Ottawa.
He was released by the BC Lions on Thursday after the team announced the return of James Butler. So in order to make room for him, Stanback, well, he was scheduled to become a free agent in February anyways. So glad to see that they've reached a deal with him. It's a 1 year deal. Most deals in the CFL are short term like that. After 5 seasons with the Owls, Stanback joined the Lions for the 2024 season, where he finished second in rushing yards. In 18 games, he had 235 carries for 1,175 yards, 1 yard shy, of his career high that he set back in 2021. So we'll see how well he gels with the Red Blacks. I mean, it's not like he's an unknown quantity there, but his experience will certainly be welcome for them.
Well, the Argos bring back McMahon and Edward. That's good news for the Argos with their platooning offensive running backs.
Yeah. So Deontay McMahon, Canadian defensive back John Edward, and American defensive back Lawrence Johnson all got signed yesterday. McMahon played 18 games in 24, his second season in double blue, rushing for 288 yards and 4 TDs while adding 30 receptions. Edward played 6 games in 2024, chipping in with 1 interception and 1 special teams tackle. The second-year Argo played all 18 games in 2023, tallying 6 tackles. Johnson had originally signed with the New Orleans Saints as an undrafted free agent in May, but was released as part of the final cuts to training camp. So we'll see how well he fits in with the Argonauts, but it'll be interesting to see how he gels.
Absolutely. Major League Baseball bans Yankee fans who interfered with Mookie Betts in 2024 World Series at ballpark indefinitely.
Yeah, this was an interesting move. I didn't see that coming, but you remember the footage.
Oh, absolutely.
Them ripping over the fence.
Event, and I also remember that there was no problem until later. All of a sudden, like the Yankees, they couldn't avoid doing this. It wasn't something they wanted to do right away. I don't remember it being something they wanted to do right away. Now it's gotten heavier.
Well, Austin Capobianco and John Hansen were ejected from that game and were banned from attending Game 5 at the ballpark. So they tried to do some repair work by donating their tickets to charity. However, MLB has decided that, they're not only going to be banned from the Yankee Stadium, but from 29 other ballparks as well. Now, the Major League Baseball did actually write a letter to these fans in which they said your conduct posed a serious risk to the health and safety of the player and went far over the line of acceptable fan behavior. Based on your conduct, Major League Baseball is banning you indefinitely from all MLB stadiums, offices, and other facilities. You are also hereby banned indefinitely from attending any events sponsored by or associated with MLB. Please be advised that if you are discovered at any MLB property or event, you'll be removed from the premises and subject to arrest for trespass. Now, this is a bit of a big blow because Capobianco and Hansen were in the seats of a season ticket holder who's had those tickets since 1990. The good news is the original holder of those season tickets will be allowed to keep them, but he also supports the decision to ban Capobianco and Hansen from Yankee Stadium.
It kind of has no choice, I don't think.
No.
I think that's pretty much. You can't blame leagues. This is a situation where the league has to send a very stern message that fans do not initiate interaction between they and the players. That's not allowed in any league that allows that to happen. It's foolish behavior on their part.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is there's other incidences of this too. I don't know if you saw this particular incident, but Tyson Bell of the Halifax Thunderbirds was recently cited for assault in Denver, Colorado, where fans apparently uh, were making comments to him after the game as he was leaving the floor. Um, he took a swing at one of the fans with a stick and tried to punch the other. Um, Denver police has reported that Bell struck a victim in the face, causing a minor injury. He's due to be in court on January 22nd. Bell had been suspended indefinitely from the team. Uh, and as for what's happening to those particular fans, I don't know what's going to happen. People have to understand that there's a certain code of conduct that goes along with you buying your tickets. It doesn't give you carte blanche to say anything that you want to players.
Not anything you want, but I think like, look, I'm not going to defend the fans, but players cannot have, they cannot allow words to cause them to respond physically. First of all, that's the bottom line that I'm going to stick to. If they physically attack a player and a player is clearly defending himself, I don't think that should entitle them to any problems. But at the end of the day, the fans are fans. They're not participants. They can try to affect the game by getting under the skin of players. But I truly believe where they can draw the line, Aaron, is, let's say fans have a right to be persistent, obnoxious, distracting people, right? We let them be that during the game without doing it in a violent or verbally violent way, right? But one thing they're not allowed to do, it's very simple, that at the end of the game, the opportunity for fans to talk badly to players should be over. Because I draw the line between, it's like Aaron, when we're at the football game and the other team has the ball and the Argo fans try to distract them. That's part of the game. That is part of the game, right? But it isn't part of the game to harass players after the game is over. Once that final buzzer goes, you don't have, because now you're in personal time. You're not in game time now. Now this is a personal attack because you're not affecting the game, which is what the fans, I think, have a right to. They have a right to yell at players. They're not allowed to yell profanities at them. They're not allowed to, sexually or their background. They can't be discriminatory. They can't be racist. All that wonderful stuff during the game. But being verbally abusive, in quotation marks, if you don't mind, for the most part, that's a go-to. That's I can understand fans having that right. But again, once the final buzzer goes, I think it's over, because then now you're into personal time.
Yeah, no, and understand. I am not going to defend Bell's actions here.
I
As
hope
the
not.
professional athlete, you have to be above that sort of thing.
And you
You
can't
know,
physically abuse
no,
anybody.
you cannot react like that. Once the final whistle goes and you're heading off the floor, silo. That's it. You're
Head out
done.
the door.
Yeah, just
It's
get off
over.
the floor. So
They have no right to bother you, and you have every right to leave. And if you have that option, see, that's why I say it's different when the game's on. Player
mhm.
can't leave. He's got to play his game, right? So I guess fans have them, but they don't have the right to harass them when they're about to go off the floor when the game's over. That's just unacceptable. There's no doubt in my mind that it's unacceptable.
I
What
find it rather disingenuous that one of the lacrosse journalists that was writing it, who's based out of Connecticut, was wondering if it was a team culture thing. Apparently, uh, last year, another Halifax player tried to climb out of the penalty box to confront a fan in Denver. And again, you got to wonder: is it a team thing or is it the fans in Denver thing? Because both of these incidents happen in Denver. So you've got to
Oh,
wonder, it's not necessarily a team thing. It
but were
could
they both
potentially be a Denver
Halifax
fan thing.
players that were they both? I think I heard you say they were both Halifax players
Yep.
that went into this dance.
Yep. That's
So
correct.
this could be just a relationship between those two teams that extends into the fan base. But
It's possible.
to your point, is there something the Halifax team is not making obvious to the players that they can't do that. It's not like, I don't think any of us will say that they tell the players to go into the stands, but sometimes it's not. It's like that. Just because they don't tell them not to doesn't mean they're giving them permission, but maybe they have to tell them not to. That should be a reminder after the first incident. There should be an understanding. The second one is not as forgivable as the first, Aaron, in my mind. If that happened
Oh,
before,
100%.
then there's a problem with the team, because the team should know that it happened before. Now they should be talking to all the players and saying, no matter what they say, forget it. And then with the league, as far as the team, the home team is concerned, as I said, maybe they should tweak, the fans and what they're able to do. When the game's over, you're not allowed to harass the players.
I just think it interesting that you'd have to tell players, don't be like Mike Milbury.
You have to, Aaron. You have to.
For some reason I expect them to be more intelligent and less childish than that. Maybe it's naive of me to believe that players, um, you know, are aware that they shouldn't behave like the worst. But
Aaron, in a situation, in how do we draw the line? How do we draw the line in not doing something that we shouldn't be doing? It isn't because we realize it at that moment. It's because we've been taught not to do that. You know, it's I guess what I'm trying to say is that there needs to be a proactive reminder that, you and I, violence doesn't answer any question. Violence does not answer any question. Violence does not answer any question. We have to harp that into our heads to remind ourselves it doesn't. If we don't do that, maybe it creeps in, Aaron. And with players who are harassed by, that should be part of the training for the players, right? That they should have somehow the message planted in their brain that they can't go into the stands. And if they do go into the stands, is it because they weren't reminded they can't? And if they're, they can't have the excuse that, well, we didn't know you couldn't do that, right? Because essentially, isn't that all they've got? They didn't know that they couldn't go in there. Somebody must have told them you can't.
yeah, I just again, I guess maybe I'm just giving them too much credit.
Well,
You know,
I don't think credit's the proper word. I just don't think they're prepared to deal with the obnoxious behavior of some fans, and they get under your skin. You're only human. These players are only human. But again, we don't know what we're apologizing for. We don't know what we're not apologizing for. We don't know what the fans said. You know, is there a line that fans can cross in what they say to instigate a problem with the players? You and I absolutely agree. There is a line they can cross, and until they cross that line, players should not go in the stands, and they shouldn't go in after they cross the line either. Okay, let's go into the third period and let's talk about the Habs, and let's talk about Nick Suzuki.
so Suzuki's actually been having a really good season. He scored in overtime to lift the Canadiens past the Capitals 3-2. He scored one at 1:15 of overtime. He got in front of the net and put the puck up and over Logan Thompson. Um, the good news is the Habs are no longer at the bottom of the standings. They are 9-1-0 in their past 10 games, which is a significant improvement from where they were before. Um, they're not necessarily back in a wild card spot at this point here. They are, however, now at 43 points and chasing Pittsburgh and Columbus for the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Excuse me. Cole Caulfield and Josh Anderson also scored for Montreal. Jacob Dobes stopped 15 shots to improve to 3-0-0 in the NHL. Um, Defensive Jacob Chikrin and Lars Eller scored, and Ethan Frank picked up his first NHL points in his debut for Washington. The Capitals have actually dropped 3 of their last 5 games.
Mm,
That was Caulfield's 23rd goal of the season, and Chikrin has 12, the third most in the league amongst defensemen.
absolutely. And the Sens are very disappointing. 4-0 loss. You've watched them, and I've talked to you about them. You know how I feel about the team and how I've felt for years that they should have been a better team than they've been in recent memory. And this was the year it seemed like they got a goaltender. I know he's hurt now, and I know it seems to be a problem because he's hurt. But still, a 4-0 loss, and the string of losses they've had recently, just they don't speak to who the team was earlier.
No, it seems like they're Jekyll and hiding it here.
Totally.
You know, uh, it's- it, Thomas Chabot, their highest paid defenseman, was -4 on the night, which means he was on the ice for every single goal against. According to him, it just wasn't good. There was no way around it. Nobody can hide behind anything. From top to bottom, the whole team was just not good enough. Simple as that. It didn't help that Kachuk boarded Jason Zucker from behind. Zucker had to be helped off the ice. It was a really bad hit, just really late, definitely from behind, almost folded him in half. But at the end of the game, the Senators, who are now 19, 18, and 3, left the ice to a chorus of boos. This was
Mm,
their fourth straight loss. They're now 0-3 and 1. This was Ottawa's first home game since December 14th, after they were forced on the road for 9 games to the World Junior Hockey Championships. And after Canada laid an egg there, the Senators coming back and laying another egg in their first game back really didn't help. I was genuinely hoping for better, but the Senators have now been outscored 15-4 through their current losing streak. They were one of the hottest teams in the league before Christmas, but have gone 1-3-1 since December 28th when the game picked up. This
well,
is
hopefully
just
they get home and home cooking and your own bed and stuff like that. This team can straighten things away. Another Canadian team that is not playing as well as it's played, the Jets. Their engines are, I don't know, I guess a seagull went in there or something. I don't know. A
they've
goose.
lost 4 of their last 5, and I'm genuinely starting to get concerned because they've actually lost 3 at home as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, LA is not in the best mindset right now based on what's going on there in the West Coast. Um, the Jets had just 19 shots on goal and found the back of the net once on a third period, power play goal from Mark Scheifele. Alex Turcotte scored his 5th goal of the season early in the second period. Um, it's one of those things where uh, they looked like they had everything in place to go and to get everything done, but they just couldn't. The Jets are now 28, 12, and 3, um, and it's a long homestand. They've got an 8-game homestand that they're going through right now. They only have one win through the first half of it. Um, they're 1-1-2, and this is not the way you want to be playing, especially not at this time of the year. Coming up on the All Star break and coming back after Christmas, this is going to be a problem for them.
Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, Hallebuck's the greatest thing that they've got going for them, but he can't do it all. And they have some great offensive weapons on the team. They play well defensively. Their coaching has proved to be effective. They were perfect at the beginning of the year. Then they met the Leafs, and the Leafs beat them. They're the first team to do it. And not since then, but since then, in periods of time, they have not played well. They've gotten back to being really good, but they haven't been able to hang on to being good consistently. And right now, this is probably the second most inconsistent stretch that they've had this year. With this one being the last one, the most memorable, I guess, for the fans. But they weren't being booed like the Ottawa team. Like that like this is this is a really good team not playing well, and the fans will be upset about it. But I guess, Aaron, they've been good long enough that the fans know that they can work their way out of this problem.
Look, I mean, Hellebuck is still giving them a 926 saves percentage. He's played absolutely out of his mind. So bad stretch at the Canada Life Center or not. He's got 5 shutouts so far this season. He's only allowed 69 goals against in the 33 games that he's played. He's faced 934 shots. He's been absolutely phenomenal for them through the first half of the season.
Absolutely.
They just
Absolutely.
they've got to find a way to get more secondary scoring when they just can't seem to pull the trigger otherwise.
No, it's true. They can't. They can't. And they might be able to work things out. I'm pretty sure they'll be able to work things out. Let's
Here's the
go to
thing.
the let's move on to the next story.
Yep.
Sorry, and we'll talk about the Oilers. Zach Hyman and his family have bought a junior team. Now, Zach Hyman's dad owned a lot of MTHL teams, a lot of local hockey teams, minor hockey teams. So this is them growing their brand, if you will, and getting a bigger team. This is an interesting move. Tell us more about it, Aaron.
So, for those who aren't aware, the current owner of the Bulldogs, which is the Brantford Bulldogs, which is the team that Hyman and his family are supposed to have bought, is actually owned by Michael Andlauer, who is the current owner and operator of the Ottawa Senators.
Right.
Um, there are a couple Oilers prospects like Sam O'Reilly and William Nicol that are currently playing for the Bulldogs, but at this point in time. Um, it looks like Zach is trying to build a bit more of the family's brand. Um, Zach's father, Stuart, famously is known for purchasing a lot of hockey teams,
A lot.
where Zach and his brother used to play junior hockey. But Zach was the only one to make it all the way to the NHL currently. Um, but we are expecting an official announcement on Monday. It's pending OHL board approval. So we're going to be going through that over the course of the weekend. Um, this this couples with Hyman writing children's books, including The Bambino and Me, Hockey Hero, and The Magician's Secret. All three books were published in the Penguins Random House. It looks like at this point Zach is trying to set himself up for a career after hockey. Being Purchasing the team from the owner of the Senators might lead to something a little later down the road, but
Hmm.
uh, it's interesting to see.
Well, he's made a little bit of money and he's investing it, just like his father invested it. You'd be surprised the value of minor hockey teams. You'd be
They
surprised. They have
yeah
a
they
value. They truly do.
they can be relatively expensive things to own. I do remember a bit of a furor though over uh, the fact that his father had bought so many teams that Zach had played on, and one of the running jokes, at least amongst my circle of friends, was wondering when his father was going to try to buy the Oilers just to make sure that Zach would never have to work again.
Ah, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
uh, you know,
Uh, all right. We'll leave it there. That's really interesting. For those of you that are NFL fans, you'll know that the LA Rams are playing their home game in Arizona. The league approved that move to play the playoff game because it's important. It's the playoffs. The On the other hand, the Flames and LA Kings had a game planned to be played in LA, and other wildfires have caused that to be canceled. Aaron,
yeah, this is one of those situations where it's not ever anything you want to see. Pacific Palisades is on fire. Eaton is on fire right now. There's a combined somewhere in the neighborhood of 27,000 acres worth of forest burning
fifty
in and around
thousand
Los
people have
Angeles.
been displaced.
It is an unbelievable scene. I just think and this is just the perverse side of me talking here, Frank. But Tampa Bay earlier this year had a game against the Hurricanes canceled because of a hurricane, and the Flames were supposed to be playing the Kings, but that game's been canceled
Oh,
because of
wow. Oh,
fire.
why didn't I think of that?
it,
The irony is tasty there, buddy. The irony
it
is very
really is.
tasty.
It's ashy.
That's it. Oh man, that's a good one. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the Canucks, and they ran into the same problem the Leafs had. They just couldn't beat the Hurricanes.
So interesting thing here: the Leafs played the Hurricanes on Thursday, and then second half of their back to back, the Canes were playing the Canucks. Tonight is the second half of the Canucks back to back with travel, coming from Carolina to
They each had
Toronto.
turns.
The Canucks actually left this morning due to icy conditions in and around Raleigh, North Carolina. They were not 100% certain they'd be able to get out of the airport. So they put their players up in the hotel and they flew into Toronto apparently this morning. But yeah, Vancouver unfortunately couldn't find a way to beat Dustin Tokarski, uh, who made 14 saves for his first NHL shutout since the 2021-2022 season. Uh, The fact that Vancouver only managed 14 shots against the Hurricanes is to me slightly concerning. It just sounds like, from what I saw in the highlights, they just got bullied up and down the ice. Quinn Hughes was not having a good time of it. Thatcher Demko stopped 18 of the 20 shots that he faced, but they just apparently it was a disaster. Vancouver wasn't able to set up in the offensive zone and finished with 2 shots over 6 minutes. Um, Carolina had 2 short-handed shots and even created high danger chances despite being on the penalty kill. This is one of those situations where Vancouver just did not play well, and they're coming into Toronto now on the second half of a back-to-back with travel, tired, cranky. Like, if I were a
What
Vancouver
you're
Canuck
saying
player,
is the
I'd just
Leafs
be.
are getting set up to lose. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm
'Cause
saying that
this
this
is a
is a
scary
trap
thing.
game.
Exactly. I saw that coming. It is a trap game because everything says Vancouver should not do well in this game, and as the Leafs might be okay, but let's just make sure they don't have a Zamboni driver in the net, just to make sure. Just to make sure.
This is the 27th time in franchise history that the Canucks have recorded 14 or fewer shots. This is the third time they've been shut out this season. They finished the game with 29 shots that were blocked and won 55% of the faceoffs.
So they haven't been playing badly.
No, they haven't, unfortunately. But, in this particular case here, the offense couldn't get it together. Jordan Stahl scored at 14:31 of the first period,
He's the
and
guy that
Andrei
destroyed the
Svechnikov
Leafs.
scored at 1:37 of the second. So, it's just this is every single thing is pointing towards a gigantic Leafs loss
The
today.
the the Carolina Hurricanes are a team that when Toronto went into play there, doesn't matter how well Toronto's playing, doesn't matter how badly the Canes are playing. That team has the Leafs number. And they have Anderson, he's injured, so he's not playing. They got Tokarski now. It's amazing, a lot of the goaltenders that Carolina has had, they've all been goalies that are well known in the league. They really haven't fostered a young goaltender, at least not one that plays regularly. All their goaltenders are goaltenders that were somewhere else. And now, they've got one in the goal now that I think is there that they've brought in and are training, if you will. But they have a history of bringing in goaltenders left and right. They have not really used their own goaltenders. I think he is one of their draft picks, right? The Russian's one of their draft picks.
Kachetkov, as far as I'm aware, is one
Yeah,
of
he
theirs.
is, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of unusual for them. They've Mrazek, they've had like Anderson we talked about. They've had a whole litany of goaltenders that came there to see if they could be the answer. And the best one they brought in is Anderson. He's been the one that's most consistent and been with the team longer that has done really well. So yeah, that's the thing about Carolina. They're a tough team for Toronto to beat. And I agree that this is a trap game for Toronto because it's one of those games where they have to play without thinking about what the other team has gone through. So they're going to have to play as hard as they can, assume they're going to have a tough opponent. And if they want to win this game, Aaron, I truly believe the Leafs have to score early.
Oh, definitely. They have to score early and they have to score often. That's the only way around it. And you're right. Kachetkov was actually the 36 overall second round pick by the Carolina Hurricanes. But every other goalie that they've got, Anderson out of town, Spencer Martin out of town, Yana Peretz out of town, Dustin Tokarski out of town. All guys that have come in to try their hand here. They don't necessarily have a lot of homegrown goalies, but they do seem to have a little bit of luck finding the goalies that everybody else seems to have gotten rid of.
And they play a decent defensive game, which we've talked about is why the Maple Leafs have goaltenders that look a lot better. Not that I don't want to take credit away from the goaltenders. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I am saying is that to be a good goaltender, you make all the big saves. But to be a good goaltender that has the statistics to support how good you are, you need help from your team because you can't do it by yourself. No matter how much we like to say that the only person that reaches into the back of the net to get the puck out is the goaltender, but there are a lot of players that help get it in there. So you need some help from your team. And the Leafs in the game tonight against Vancouver, I don't know. I'm curious if Vancouver starts slow. If Vancouver starts slow and Toronto plays along with that slow rate of the Leafs have to play like they played against the Bruins, right from the drop of the whistle. They have to play to dominate the game, and they have to be efficient and take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. If they don't do that early, they're going to give Vancouver a chance to not be rested, but be emotionally clear and put behind them and forget about the fact that they've had a rough night or a rough day, you know? And so we'll see. We'll see if they can overcome that. It'll be an interesting game.
Most assuredly. And that being said, I think it's almost time for puck drop, so it might be a good idea for us to get onto our respective couches just to see what
I
happens.
got one more
Oh,
thing.
all right.
Um, I was with David on his show, and I was talking about Morgan Riley
Yeah.
and about how he's been a bit of a disappointment, and maybe he's not the guy they need, like a 1, 2, or a 3 defenseman. And so then I'm looking in the paper, and they write an article. Somebody wrote an article basically saying the same thing I said. Uh, do you think Morgan Riley maybe in recent, at least the recent games, has turned around his game? Because before that, Aaron, he wasn't the kind of top defender that the Leafs need him to be.
I think part of that is the fact that he's also a new father and he's really setting into married life. He just got married over the course of the last summer.
Agreed.
So there's a lot of that that's coming around now. And once the infant gets a little bit older and starts sleeping through the night, I have a feeling Morgan's going to be a lot better. He has slowly been improving. He's not quite the offensive force that he was a few seasons ago that inspired the Maple Leafs to give them the contract that they did. But I don't believe that this season is lost. I don't believe that his time in Toronto is done just quite yet. He's still got a Pizzaville endorsement deal that has to run its course. With their Riley big deal. I'm a big fan of those when it comes to hockey nights. But no, honestly, he's been slowly turning around his season. He wasn't as inspiring earlier in the year. His defensive performances have been getting more consistent, and he's chipping in a little bit more on offense.
Yeah, he needs to be more of the Riley that they depend on. Aaron, thanks for
Yes.
doing this.
Hey, appreciate it, Frank. Always glad to be here.
He's Aaron Rule in Freeland. I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Leaf Talk, seen live on Fridays, 6 p.m. Today, we did it on a special day. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Leaf Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next time.